Very recently, an episode of Surrounded aired with Mehdi Hasan finding himself literally in the midst of 20 far-right voices in the USA. If you haven't seen it yet, then it is probably a must-watch episode for you, and link is in the podcast notes. A lot of people have, for many years, said that it is wrong to give hate a platform. This has been the policy of social democrats, socialists, liberals, and conservatives in many countries. Has that served to reduce the spread of hate and anger in politics? In the show itself, Mehdi stops debating one person who admits he is a fascist autocrat, but around him were 19 others applauding him, his hate, and his refusal to recognize the horrors of fascism. In response to my own social media posts on this topic, many people, even conservatives, have denounced the views of the people on the show, some of whom supported Trump's policies on immigration, views which would have been supported by millions around Europe, arguing for nations to close their borders. On this episode, Esheru joins me to talk about some of the issues raised in the Surrounded show, and he laments the lack of education, critical thinking, and individuality people have nowadays when confronted by these extremely complex political questions. This is Twoandamic. Rise up and be curious.
Dung weche pek kod welo mabiro e Twoandamic. Dung parodit kod jok mawuoye Twoandamic. Seche tin sud buta wawinji e Twoandamic. Wola wachokre, wabed piny, bi wawinje. Ero chako, dung omit ndi. Twoandamic podcast makende.
I'm joined again by my good friend and political activist, Esheru. Esheru, how's it going, brother?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me back. It has been a while, actually. It has been a while.
It has been. It's been way too long. But thankfully, we remain in contact in between our shows. And on one such contact, you sent me a link to Mehdi Hasan's showing on Surrounded, where he's basically surrounded by 20 far-right Americans. And that was an eye-opener, to say the least. Do you want to just, for those people who don't know about it, do you want to just talk about it a bit?
Absolutely. So basically, Mehdi Hasan decides that he's going to debate 20 far-right voices and opinions. And I believe each session is timed to, 10 minutes or something like that. And they cover various topics about, well, basically, I think his life in the US. I mean, he's a born and raised Brit, but a naturalized American. He has citizenship. He has family there. He has lived there for some time. And, they're basically trying to tell him what they believe is wrong with the country from their opinion, their view, their political leaning. And of course, Mehdi, being Mehdi, as we know, rebuttals them extremely well with his knowledge. And really delivers the blow, I think. But the only criticism I would have with the format is I believe they should have vetted the participants a little bit better, because Mehdi had all of them, bang to rights. I did actually tweet him and I said to him, Mehdi, you should have been a boxer because you had these guys on the ropes the entire time.
Yeah.
So that was.
Which he did. He talks. So basically, he had 4 statements that he made. In all cases, his statements were based on Trump's approach or the Republican Party's policy on these 4 main areas. And then there was one person among the 20 who he had debated, who he thought would be the most challenging person, and that person would come back and talk to him about their topic. So you're right, they did cover the kind of experience that Mehdi has had living in the USA, but he kind of framed it in a different way. He framed it as Trump's policies towards the Constitution, immigration, and the last point was the US policy with regards to Gaza. So as in, he did talk about all of these issues, which would touch on the daily lives of Americans in most cases. And it was an amazing insight into, I suppose, in some ways, the educational policy in the USA. Mehdi, as you said, was born in the UK. He lived in the UK for I don't know how many years. It's only recently, in the last few years, I would imagine, I don't know exactly, 10 years or so, that he's been in the US. His awareness of political issues surrounding the Constitution, political events, they were debating a 19th century Supreme Court case, which Mehdi Hasan himself did not even introduce the topic. Somebody else introduced that topic, and he just responded saying, well, you would know that. And he quoted this case. So Mehdi's awareness and knowledge of US history, political history, legal history, superseded anyone else's knowledge in that group. And that is amazing.
Absolutely. I think we got, as you said, the education system in the US. I always like to compare Great Britain and the US because they're very similar. When you look at the world itself, there are no two countries that are more similar than Britain and the United States. One spawned the other, and we've been fed this diet. So the US having a special relationship with Great Britain. We know this the special relationship only goes one way. But the way that people are educated in the US is very similar to the way that people are educated here. Less and less money is pumped into state schools, okay? You have elite universities, elite private schools. The people that go to these elite universities and private schools are the ones that end up running the country through all the top industries, being business, banking, finance, media, politics, you name it, right? So literally, they educate 1% to rule over the other 99%. The rest of us kind of has to make do with what's been given and make the best out of it. But one thing that both countries never teach is critical thinking. Okay, these are things that's not taught at secondary school level. Now, at university, I don't know if it's actually taught or if it's a choice. I can't remember that far back when I studied at university here, but I studied in Sweden in my 30s, and I remember learning critical thinking skills. My son, who was born and raised in Sweden, still lives there. He was taught critical thinking at school at age 14. I remember sitting down with him and talking him through it. So it's something that people are not really taught here. And what I, after living in Sweden, and I'm sure you can attest to this living in Berlin, that when you have an educated workforce that is taught to eat properly and take care of themselves in a preventative way, you have a healthier, a better informed population to make informed political decisions and social decisions about how they want their country run. This is something that Britain and both America lacks.
Yeah, and indeed, we have educational systems which are so overpriced at the point of service, which in itself has to tell you that this is by design. If you go to university to try to better yourself, you become a prisoner to the system, because when you emerge with debts up to the eyeballs. And so basically you are completely bound to the system, thereby removing some movement possibilities from you.
Absolutely. I think people find themselves, double-edged sword. You say they go to university, they come out with debt, and they're literally under pressure then to then start working to pay the debt, and they take any job that they can. And before you know it, 3 or 4 years have gone by, and they're still in that job, and life happens, and they've never really utilized their education. A friend of mine, her son has just graduated with a 2-1. I believe he did I can't remember what subject he read, but he just said that the prospects are not very good. So he's going to go work for his father, who's got a building company. And so he's just done 3.5 years of uni, but now he's going to go and learn to become an electrician and work with his dad in the company.
What I find quite interesting is somebody who's traveled very little bit. Now, obviously, I've lived in 3 countries, and I have found just communicating with people from different cultures, with different perspectives, is such an education in society, in politics, in culture, in understanding, in analysis. And I feel that by removing from many people the opportunity of traveling is a disadvantage. And one of the things that came up in the talk with Mehdi Hasan was one person started quoting stuff about things that happen in London. And Mehdi asked this guy, 1 minute, I was born in London. I've lived in London. I was in London 2 or 3 weeks ago. London's great. Have you ever been there? And the guy said, no. And, and it's like Mehdi said, well, in that case, if you're going to come on to a TV show and debate somebody, then maybe you should get your background sorted out.
Well, absolutely. I think that if you have been invited to appear on a show, okay, then you get your ducks in a row. You do your reading beforehand, at least, and then you've got your notes in front of you, right? So you can prompt yourself in these situations. I think that watching that show with Mehdi really showed the lack of, I don't want to say intelligence, that's really rude, but the lack of knowledge that people today possess. We live in the information age. We have the ability to be more informed right now at this time than any other time in human history, but people are less informed today than ever before. Some say it has a lot to do with so much information out there. But if we talk critical thinking skills, we can learn to decipher what's good knowledge from what's bad knowledge, right? Something, a skill I possess, a skill you possess. Many people don't have that skill.
And we've talked about it in the past with regards to independent sources of information. And one of the reasons why you and I have gone further afield to get our information to be informed is because we are fully aware of the propaganda that mainstream media just simply pumps out there relentlessly. But a lot of people refuse to accept that that's exactly what is happening.
I think we live where people, I've got to speak from a British perspective, and I can always apply my, because I spent half my life in Sweden, I can always give you that perspective. But, in this country, there's this English exceptionalism or British exceptionalism where, people truly believe that, and I'm sure it's the same wherever you go, but certainly here, people are still living off the fumes of empire, and, they're still kind of feel that this place is the greatest place, and, the governments, they're in power, they really want to do well for us and for the people. And, the royal family really cares about you. They really care about it, and people don't want to believe anything else, because it's easier for them to continue believing the comfortable lie than face the uncomfortable truth. And that's kind of how it is. I think people are scared to face the truth. And this is one of the reasons why they push back when you attack or let them know that this is not the way it is. This is actually how it is. They push back because I think that what they fear is seeing what the reality actually is.
And quite interestingly, actually, one thing that I would say to this so-called patriots of today, we know they're not really patriots, but the so-called patriots of today is, if you think that Britain used to be better in the times of empire than it is today, they should go and read their Charles Dickens.
Well, you know what it is as well. This is the other thing. It's the propaganda you just named, and it's people are drip fed a daily dose of racism and propaganda and nostalgia through the media, through the toxic tabloids, through popular culture. And if you look at these costume dramas, I think The Gilded Age is the latest one, and I've not watched any of them. And you watch anything by Jane Austen, or Downton Abbey was a very big TV series back. Upstairs and downstairs, and people really believe that that's how life was in Victorian England for most people, but it wasn't. That's how it was in the country for people that live there, but the people that lived in the town, the rich people in the towns and cities, it was squalor. Up until the 1970s, I've got footage on my phone that will show you how people lived. Just in the 1990s, when the Premier League became very popular, right at the very beginning, and all these footballers from Italy nearing the end of their careers, people like Franco Zola and Fabrizio Ravanelli, when they moved to Britain in the very early 90s to play football, at the end of their career in Italy, they moved to the Premier League to give the Premier League a boost. And they ended up in Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Sunderland, and these places. And they called it, these were their very words, it was very much like the third world when they arrived up there. This was 1990s Britain. So you could imagine what it was like during Victorian times.
Absolutely.
It wasn't that great.
Absolutely. So patriots, please read David Copperfield and try to find out exactly how things were back in those days. Esheru, thank you very much. Once
Thank
again,
you.
please feel free to send me all of these links. I absolutely loved it. I've watched the Mehdi Hasan episode twice. It was painful the first time, but extremely educational the second time. And hopefully they'll do something like this for 20 far-right Brits as well. And we'll see how that goes.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, sir.
Two and a mic.